Cole Hartman hadn't set foot on his father's ranch in 12 years. Not since the old man told him to leave and never come back. But now, standing at the property line with the lawyer's letter in his hand, he could see smoke rising from the chimney. Someone was living in his house. He hadn't expected anyone to be here. The land, his inheritance, was all he had left of his father. He'd come back to claim it, to settle the debts that had piled up since his father's death. But as he sat there on his horse, staring at the house, the weight of it all hit him harder than he expected. The letter was clear. His father's estate was his by right. But that didn't change the knot in Cole's stomach as he gazed at the house, the barn, and the distant hills. This was home, or at least it used to be. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden light over the weathered buildings, making them look more beautiful than they ever had before. The years of neglect had softened their edges, but it still felt like the place where he grew up. And yet, it felt different now. Not just because of the years he'd been gone, but because of the person standing on the porch. The woman on the porch, dressed in a faded black dress, seemed to stand still as she watched him approach. Her hair was darker now, pulled into a simple knot at the back of her head, but the same softness lingered in her eyes. Cole's heart gave a painful lurch in his chest. Emma, the girl he had left behind, the girl he once promised to return to. She hadn't changed much, except for the sadness in her eyes and the lines around her mouth that hadn't been there before. She was still beautiful, but there was a hardness to her now, something that hadn't been there when they were young. "Cole," she said quietly, her voice carrying across the space between them. Her eyes narrowed, as though searching his face for something she didn't quite find. "You have no right to be here." He couldn't blame her for that. He had no right. He knew that. He hadn't been there when she needed him. He hadn't been there when her world fell apart. He hadn't been there when his father had grown ill and angry, pushing everyone away, even the people who loved him. And now here he was, standing on the land that had once belonged to his father, a stranger in his own home, a stranger to Emma. "Actually, I do," Cole said, his voice rough but firm. He pulled the lawyer's letter from his pocket, holding out toward her. "This is my father's will. It's mine now." Emma didn't take the letter, but her gaze flicked over it quickly. Her jaw tightened as she stepped back onto the porch, crossing her arms over her chest. "Your father didn't leave you this land. He left it to me." She motioned to the ranch around them. "He gave it to me before he died." Cole felt a cold chill run through him at her words. "What? How?" He couldn't have. "This place is mine." Emma shook her head. "He made me the legal owner after your father died. You were gone, and I had no one else. He signed everything before the end." She took a step closer, her eyes hard. "You have no right to come back and claim what's mine." Cole's hand clenched around the letter, but he didn't speak. He wasn't sure what to say. He needed this land. He needed to settle his debts, make something of himself after all these years. But standing here now, facing Emma, this woman who had once been the love of his life, the woman who had waited for him, who had suffered in ways he couldn't even imagine, it felt like the world was closing in on him. "What happened, Emma?" His voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you? I thought you would wait. I thought I'd come back. I promised I would." Her face softened for just a moment, but then she turned away, staring out at the land. Her voice was low, distant. "I waited for a long time, but you never came back. And then Thomas came along. He took care of me when your father couldn't. And when he died, this land became mine. I had no choice but to take it." The words stung more than he expected. She had married Thomas, a man much older than her, but one who had offered stability when Cole had abandoned her. She had done what she had to do to survive. And now, standing here in front of him, she was still doing what she had to do. A little girl appeared behind Emma, peeking around her skirt with wide, curious eyes. Cole's heart skipped. She had his father's eyes, green, sharp, and full of life. Emma's daughter, he realized, the child he'd never met. Her name was Lily, and she had never known her real father, Cole. "Who's this, Mama?" Lily asked, pointing to Cole. Is he a cowboy? Emma smiled softly at her daughter, then looked back at Cole. This is Cole, she said, her voice trembling. Your papa's friend. Cole swallowed hard. A friend. That was all he was to her now. A friend who had abandoned them both. He wanted to reach out, to hold her, but he stayed frozen in place. Stay the night in the barn, Cole, Emma said after a long pause, her voice firm again. I don't know what you think you're entitled to, but we'll work this out tomorrow. But I'm not going to let you take what's mine, not without a fight. He nodded, feeling the weight of it all settle in his chest. Tomorrow would bring answers, but tonight he would have to sleep in a barn, just as she said. Before he left, he glanced back at Emma, his heart aching with the old love that still burned between them. I never stopped loving you, Emma, he whispered, but she didn't hear him. Or maybe she just didn't want to. She turned away, the door closing softly behind her. And just like that, the past he had abandoned was locked away once more. The next morning, Cole woke up in the barn, the smell of hay and dust mixing with the cool, crisp air of dawn. He rubbed his eyes, stiff on the hard ground, and made his way to the corral to stretch his legs. The ranch hadn't changed much in his absence. There was a familiar quiet to the place, a stillness that clung to the land. But it wasn't just the land that felt familiar. His father's grave sat off in the distance, a simple wooden marker with a few wildflowers scattered at its base. Emma had been here, tending to the grave, and for the first time since he'd arrived, he felt something shift inside him. A combination of guilt, regret, and relief. His father was gone, but the land remained. The past couldn't be erased, but maybe it could still be mended. As Cole stood there, staring at the grave, Emma approached, carrying a steaming mug of coffee in her hands. The sight of her made his heart skip, but the coldness in her eyes reminded him that the distance between them was not easily bridged. I brought you some coffee, she said, her tone clipped. She handed it to him, her fingers brushing his ever so slightly. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a crack in the wall she'd built between them. He took the coffee, their eyes meeting for a brief moment. There was so much left unsaid, so much pain that neither of them had confronted. But as much as they wanted to avoid it, the reality of their situation was unavoidable. They had to coexist on this land for the time being, and whether they liked it or not, that meant working together. After a long silence, Emma spoke again, this time with a more measured tone. The lawyer is supposed to sort out the documents in a few days, she said. But for now, we have 1 week. You stay here, work the ranch, and we'll see what happens. We can't keep fighting over this land. Cole didn't argue. He nodded, knowing that she had a point. They couldn't change the situation overnight, no matter how much either of them wished they could. I'll help around the ranch, he said, his voice low, reluctant. But I'm not here to take everything from you, Emma. I just need to figure things out. You don't need to do anything for me, she replied sharply, but there was something softer in her eyes as she spoke. But we both need to figure this out, or else we're both going to lose everything. Her words stung more than he expected. He could feel her exhaustion, her frustration, her fear. And as he looked at her, he realized that it wasn't just the land that mattered to her. It was everything she had fought for since he'd left. It was her daughter, Lily, the life she had built in his absence, the love she had once given him, but never received in return. She was a woman who had survived, who had done what she had to do to protect her child and herself. It made him respect her more than ever, but it also made the pain of their past harder to bear. Later that morning, after a quiet breakfast, Cole followed Emma as she tended to the property. They worked together in silence, their movements speaking more than words ever could. They repaired the fence along the east pasture, the rhythm of their work echoing the days when they had worked side by side as teenagers. There was an ease to their movements, an unspoken understanding between them that made the work go faster, more smoothly. At one point, their hands brushed together as they both reached for a hammer. And for a split second, Cole thought he saw something in her eyes, something fragile, something that reminded him of the woman he had once loved. But before he could say anything, She pulled her hand away, her face hardening again. "You're not here to rekindle anything, Cole," she said quietly, her voice laced with caution. "I'm here to keep this place running. I'm here for Lily." He didn't argue, though his heart ached at the thought. "I know," he said softly, not wanting to push her further. The hours passed in a quiet, tense rhythm. But there was one moment that broke the tension. Lily, Emma's daughter, wandered over to Cole as he worked on the fence. The little girl, no older than 6, was full of energy and curiosity. She peered up at him with wide eyes, her face full of questions. "Are you a cowboy?" she asked, her voice innocent, filled with wonder. Cole smiled softly, a warmth spreading in his chest at the sight of her. "I used to be," he replied with a grin. "But now, I'm just trying to help your mama fix things up around here." Lily giggled, running off to play with the chickens in the yard. The simple exchange brought a fleeting moment of peace to Cole's otherwise turbulent emotions. It reminded him of the child he had left behind, of a life he could have had if things had gone differently. As the day wore on, Emma reluctantly shared more about her life after Cole left. Over dinner that evening, with Lily chattering happily at the table, Emma revealed some of the things she'd kept hidden from him all these years. "Your father changed after you left," Emma said quietly, her voice tinged with both bitterness and sorrow. "He became someone different. He was gentle, regretful, sick with consumption. I took care of him until the end." She paused, her eyes distant as she spoke, the weight of the past heavy on her words. "Before he died, he gave me the land, as payment for all the years I spent here, and as an apology. I think he wanted you to come back someday, but—" Her words trailed off, and Cole felt the ache of a truth he had been avoiding for so long. His father, for all his harshness, had tried to make amends before it was too late. He had wanted Cole to come back, but in the end, it was Emma who had stayed. After dinner, as Lily fell asleep, the two of them sat on the porch, the night sky spread out above them. The air was thick with unspoken words, with years of hurt and longing that neither of them knew how to address. "I thought about you every day I was gone," Cole said, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma didn't respond right away, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Then why didn't you come back?" she asked, her voice soft but edged with the pain of those years. Her face was close to his, and for a moment, it felt like the world had narrowed to just the two of them. The years, the mistakes, all of it hung between them like a heavy fog. But then Emma pulled away, breaking the moment. "Some things can't be undone," she said, her voice firm, though her eyes betrayed her. The tension was thick as she stood, walking back into the house. Before she went inside, she turned back to him, her face softening for the briefest moment. "There's something in your father's papers you need to see. Something he wanted you to know about the night you left." Cole nodded, a knot tightening in his stomach. What had his father kept hidden all these years? What had he wanted him to understand? The question lingered in the air, unanswered, as Cole watched Emma disappear into the house, the door closing softly behind her. The following morning, as the sun crept over the horizon, Cole couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in his chest. After Emma's cryptic words the night before, he spent the early hours wandering the property, his mind racing over the possibilities of what his father's letter might reveal. He kept finding himself drawn to the barn, where the work his father had left unfinished seemed to call out to him. It was there, in the quiet of the barn, that Emma found him later in the morning. She held a sealed envelope in her hands, the edges yellowed with age, but the ink of his father's handwriting unmistakable. Cole's heart pounded as he took the letter from her, the weight of it feeling heavier than any physical burden he had ever carried. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it, the sound of the paper tearing in the stillness of the barn. He read aloud, his voice barely more than a whisper. "For Cole, when he finally comes home." The words were simple, but they struck him like a blow. As his eyes moved over the page, he began to understand the depth of his father's regret, the sorrow that had been hidden beneath the surface all those years. The letter explained everything. His mother's death, the guilt his father had carried for so long, and the harsh words that had driven Cole away. His mother hadn't died from complications of childbirth, as he'd been told, but from an illness that had taken her life long before it should have. His father, overwhelmed by grief and consumed with anger, had driven Cole away, blaming him for things that were never his fault. Cole's throat tightened as he read the final part of the letter, his father's final words to him. "Son, Emma showed me what grace looks like. Don't make my mistake. Don't run from love." The tears came before he could stop them. The dam of emotion he'd been holding back for years breaking all at once. He sank to his knees, the letter still clutched in his hand as his father's words echoed in his mind. All the guilt, the anger, the confusion he had carried with him for 12 long years began to unravel, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. The weight of the lost time was unbearable. He wept for the years he had spent away, for the father he never had a chance to make amends with, for the pain he had caused Emma by leaving without explanation. The tears flowed freely, and as he sat there on the barn floor, consumed by the grief of the past, Emma stepped into the barn, her footsteps soft but steady. She watched him for a moment, her expression unreadable, before crossing the distance between them. Without a word, she knelt beside him, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. Cole didn't flinch at her touch. He didn't pull away. He let the comfort of her presence wash over him, the warmth of it offering a small sense of peace in the chaos of his emotions. "It's not your fault," she said quietly, her voice soothing but firm. "You didn't know. None of us did." The simple words broke him all over again, but this time there was a sense of release. He looked up at her, the vulnerability he had kept hidden for so long now laid bare. "I thought I killed her, Emma," he said, his voice rough. "I couldn't face you after I thought that. I couldn't face anyone." Emma's eyes softened with understanding, and she reached out, wiping the tears from his face. "You didn't kill her, Cole," she whispered. "And you didn't kill us, either. We all had our own demons to fight." She paused, her gaze shifting to the letter in his hands. "Your father was a hard man, but he wasn't wrong about everything. He saw something in you, Cole. He always did." He let out a shaky breath, the weight of her words sinking in. He had always believed his father saw him as a failure, a disappointment. But now, reading the letter, he understood the truth. His father had loved him, and he had tried, in his own way, to make things right before it was too late. As Emma sat beside him, the two of them shared a quiet moment, one that bridged the years of separation, of silence, of pain. The distance between them felt a little smaller now, but the unresolved tension still lingered in the air, a reminder of everything that had happened. "I waited for you, Cole," Emma said softly, her voice breaking the silence. "For 2 years, I waited. And then Thomas came along, and I couldn't wait anymore. He was good to me, but I never loved him like I loved you." The admission took him by surprise, but it also filled him with a strange sense of comfort. He had never stopped loving her, and hearing her say those words was like a balm to his wounded heart. She had waited for him, even when he had left her with no explanation, no promise of return. He had abandoned her, and yet she still held the piece of him in her heart. "I never stopped loving you either," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry. I should have come back. I should have never left." She looked at him for a long moment, the flicker of something tender in her eyes before it was quickly hidden again. "Some things can't be undone, Cole, but we can start again. We have to for Lily." The mention of Lily brought him back to reality. He turned to look at the little girl playing in the yard, her laughter echoing across the land. She was the future now. She was the one they had to protect, the one they had to fight for. And Cole knew, in that moment, that he was ready to do whatever it took to make things right. Not just for himself, but for Emma and Lily. "We'll figure this out," he said, his voice steady now. "I'll help you with the land. I'll help you with everything." Emma nodded, her expression softening, but there was still a guardedness in her eyes. We'll see, she said, her voice quiet but resolute. But right now, we both need to make sure this place survives. The land, Lily, everything. They both stood up, the weight of the past still hanging heavy between them. But for the first time in a long time, it felt like there was a chance to rebuild, to heal, and maybe even to forgive. The future wasn't clear, but at least for now, they were in it together. The morning after the unsettling news of the foreclosure, the ranch felt more oppressive than ever, the weight of their future pressing down on them. Emma had been up before dawn, her face pale with worry, as she tended to the animals and the land, her hands moving through the motions of the daily tasks, as if to distract herself from the looming threat. Cole stood by the barn, watching her, feeling the burden of her silence between them. The words they hadn't said to each other, the old hurts, the unspoken fears, clung to the air, making it hard to breathe. He had no illusions anymore. This wasn't just about the land or the debts. It was about everything that had come to pass between them, everything that was now tangled up in the mess of their lives. Emma's shoulders were slumped as she fed the chickens, her movements stiff and mechanical. When she finally turned to face him, the sadness in her eyes was unmistakable. "I didn't know," she said quietly, her voice barely audible against the morning wind. "I didn't know about the taxes. Your father always handled that." The words hit Cole harder than he expected. He had always thought of his father as a distant, cold figure, but hearing Emma speak of him like that, caring enough to manage the finances even when he was dying, shifted something inside of him. "He kept it all hidden," Cole said, his voice low. "I never knew about any of it either. But it doesn't matter now. What matters is we don't have the money." His stomach twisted at the thought of losing everything, and the weight of his own financial troubles settled him like a stone in his chest. He had only $600 from selling his small ranch out west, and it was $200 short. He looked at Emma, knowing that even with his contribution, it wasn't enough to keep the land from slipping through their fingers. Emma swallowed hard, her pride fighting to stay intact. "I won't take your money," she said, the words sharp and final. "I've done this on my own. I won't be another burden to you, Cole." The refusal stung, but he understood. She had always been proud, even when it was clear she was struggling. Even after everything that had happened between them, she wouldn't let him do what he so desperately wanted to do. Help. "Emma, running away won't solve this," Cole said, his voice firm but gentle. "We need to work together if we're going to make it through." But she shook her head, her eyes brimming with frustration. I can't keep relying on other people, especially not you. You're just going to leave again. I can't do that. Not again. Not after everything." The pain in her words cut through him, and he knew then that the fear she had been carrying wasn't just about losing the ranch. It was about losing him again. That fear, that raw, vulnerable truth, hit him like a punch to the gut. But before he could respond, she turned away, retreating into the house. Cole stood there, frozen, the weight of her rejection settling over him. As much as he hated it, he understood. He had done this to her. He had left her once before, and he couldn't expect her to just forgive him and welcome him back with open arms. He had to prove that he wasn't running away this time. Later that day, after hours of trying to fix the fence and distract himself from his own spiraling thoughts, Cole found Emma again, this time sitting by the barn, her head in her hands. He could see the exhaustion in her every movement, the weight of the world bearing down on her shoulders. Lily was playing in the yard, unaware of the storm that was brewing between her parents, or at least the adults she didn't understand. "Emma," Cole said softly, sitting beside her. She didn't look at him, but he could feel the wall she had built around herself. "You don't have to do this alone. Let me help. Let me help you fight for this." She shook her head, but there was something in her eyes now, something different. "You don't get it, Cole. I can't let you throw everything away for me. You've already done that once. I won't let you do it again. I can't ask you to stay, not for me." He reached out and took her hand, feeling the warmth of it despite the cold air. "I'm not asking you to ask me, Emma. I'm telling you, I'm staying. I don't care what it takes. I'm not leaving this time. Not without you, and not without Lily. We'll figure this out." His voice cracked, the weight of his emotions spilling over. He had to make this right. He couldn't lose them again. The silence that followed was thick with the truth of his words. Emma didn't pull her hand away. She didn't speak right away, but for the first time in a long while, she looked at him, really looked at him. And for a brief moment, Cole saw something in her eyes that had been missing for years: trust. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It was enough to make him believe that maybe they could find a way through this together. But before they could talk more, Lily's voice rang out from the yard. "Mama, look what I made." The little girl came running toward them, holding up a simple wooden toy horse, smiling brightly. It was crude, but it was a sign of hope. The kind of hope that only a child's innocence could bring. Emma smiled softly, but Cole could see the worry still in her eyes. They didn't have much time. The foreclosure deadline was fast approaching, and if they didn't come up with the full $800 soon, they would lose everything. It seemed impossible, but Cole wasn't ready to give up. That night, after dinner, Cole sat by the fire in the barn, the weight of the situation settling in his chest like a heavy stone. He had no idea how they were going to come up with the money, but one thing was clear: he wasn't leaving. He wasn't going to let them lose everything again, not if there was anything he could do to stop it. The ranch, the land, Emma, and Lily, they were his family now, and he was ready to fight for them. The decision was made. He would do whatever it took to save this place, to save the family that he had almost lost forever. The question was, would they be able to pull together in time? The clock was ticking, and the pressure was rising, but for the first time in years, Cole felt like he had something worth fighting for. And he wasn't about to walk away from that. The days that followed were filled with a frantic energy that neither Cole nor Emma could escape. The weight of the $800 debt hung over them like a dark cloud, and despite the small moments of peace they found in working together, the pressure to come up with the money gnawed at them both. Cole could see the exhaustion in Emma's eyes as she worked the ranch, trying to manage everything while still trying to protect Lily from the looming threat of losing it all. She was doing everything she could to keep the place afloat, but Cole could feel the cracks starting to show. One night, as they sat together after dinner, the conversation turned to the inevitable. Emma, ever proud, insisted she wouldn't take his money. "I can't, Cole," she said firmly, the stubbornness he remembered so well in her voice. "I won't take it. You've given me enough already, and I won't let you sacrifice your future for mine." The words were spoken with a strength that made Cole want to argue, but he knew it wouldn't change anything. She had always been independent, and no matter how much he wanted to help, he couldn't force her to accept it. But as much as she fought against it, he wasn't going anywhere. He had come back for them, and he wasn't leaving until the ranch was saved or until they found a way to rebuild together. Cole had thought about the gold coins his father had left him in the workshop. He knew what his father had wanted: to give him the opportunity to fix things, to make things right. But the pride in him held him back. The thought of taking what seemed like charity, even if it was from his own father, made him feel small. He spent the night wrestling with his emotions, standing by his father's grave, speaking aloud to the man he had resented for so many years. "Why didn't you just say these things when you were alive?" he asked, his voice raw. The anger he had buried for so long resurfaced, but soon that anger turned to grief. "I wasted so much time hating you," he whispered, feeling the weight of all the lost years. "Thank you for bringing me home." His words were a form of release, and as the sun rose the next morning, he made his decision. He had no choice but to take the money to honor his father's wish. It was a sacrifice of pride, but it was one he was willing to make. When he told Emma, she didn't argue. She knew it was the only way. Together, they rode into town, their hearts heavy with the task ahead. The sheriff and the banker were waiting for them at the office, the papers already prepared. The banker's surprise was palpable when Cole handed over the money. "You've got enough here," the banker said, his eyebrows raising. "You're paying off the debt?" "The full amount." Cole nodded, his heart in his throat as the finality of the transaction sank in. The ranch was saved, but the struggle was far from over. As they left the office, the whispers of the townspeople followed them, some murmuring in support, others judging the decision to accept the money. The world they lived in wasn't kind to widows and men who had been gone too long, and Emma could feel the weight of their eyes on her. The preacher caught up with them outside the office, a look of concern on his face. "Are you two getting married?" he asked bluntly, his gaze lingering on Cole. Emma stiffened, but Cole met the preacher's eyes with a steady look. "That's between us and the lady," he replied, his voice firm. The preacher, undeterred, nodded. "Well, you should make it right soon, for the child's sake." The comment lingered between them as they rode back to the ranch. Cole felt the tension in Emma's posture, the discomfort that came with the idea of being judged. She had spent years trying to keep a low profile, protecting Lily from the harsh realities of their world, and now she was faced with the judgment of others once more. The weight of the situation wasn't just on Cole's shoulders. It was on hers, too. Later that evening, as they sat together on the porch, Cole tried to broach the subject of marriage. "Emma, I want to do this right," he began, but she interrupted him, her voice sharp. "If you're asking out of duty, don't do that to me." The pain in her voice was unmistakable, and Cole's heart sank. He had never meant for her to feel that way, to feel like a second choice. "It's not duty," he said, his voice softening. "I don't know how to make you believe that, but it's not about that." "Then what is it?" she asked, her eyes searching his face for something. Anything that would prove he wasn't just doing this because of some misplaced sense of guilt. Cole hesitated, his heart pounding. "Guilt? Pity? No, it's about you, Emma. It's about coming back and realizing that I made a mistake, and that I don't want to make it again." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Emma said nothing. But when she spoke, her voice was filled with a quiet vulnerability. "I don't know how to believe that anymore. I've spent so many years feeling like I was the last choice, like I was something Thomas chose out of obligation. I need to know I'm your first choice, Cole, not your last option." The truth of her words hit him like a thunderclap. He understood then, more than ever, what she had been carrying all these years. She had never felt chosen. She had been pushed aside, left to pick up the pieces of a broken life, and now, after everything, she needed to know that Cole was choosing her, not because he had to, but because he truly wanted to. "I understand," he said, his voice low, "and I will prove it to you, Emma. I promise." That night, Cole stayed up late, working on a secret project in the workshop. He knew words weren't enough, and he had to show her, in the most concrete way he could, that he wasn't just asking because it was the right thing to do. He was asking because he loved her. But as he worked, the weight of the task ahead hung over him, and he knew that whatever came next, they would have to face it together. The next morning, as Cole worked diligently in the workshop, his mind was filled with the thought of what was to come. The court hearing for Lily's custody was just days away, and the tension between him and Emma was palpable. The news of Thomas's brother, Martin Grace, coming to claim Lily as his own had shaken both of them, but neither of them could ignore the truth. They were facing a battle for the little girl they both loved. Martin, with his wealth and influence, was a threat to everything Emma had fought for, and his arrival in town had only added fuel to the fire of Emma's already fragile nerves. He had a legal claim on Lily, and his accusations of Emma being an unfit mother were rooted in the harsh judgments of a town that had always looked down on her for her past. For days, Emma had barely slept, her mind racing with the fear that she might lose Lily, her one source of joy, the child she had fought to raise with love and devotion despite the hardships. Cole could see the cracks in her armor, but she refused to let him in. She kept her distance, stubbornly maintaining her independence, as if believing that she could shoulder this burden alone. The truth was, Emma was terrified. Terrified of losing Lily, terrified of being judged by the town, terrified of trusting Cole again. But Cole knew now that he couldn't stand by and watch her go through this alone. He wouldn't allow it. That night, after the sun had set and the sounds of the day's work had faded, Cole went to Emma, his resolve hardening. He had made his decision. He couldn't let her face this alone. "I'm going to fight for her," Cole said firmly, his voice unwavering. "I'm not going to let Martin take Lily. Not without a fight." Emma looked at him, her face filled with skepticism and fear. "You can't just take her, Cole. Martin has the law on his side. He has money, power. We have nothing. You can't fight someone like that." Her words stung, but Cole wasn't backing down. "I don't care about money, Emma. I care about Lily. And I care about you. We'll fight this together. I'll do whatever it takes." Emma shook her head, the weight of her pride still keeping her at a distance. "You don't understand," she whispered. "This isn't just about fighting for Lily. It's about me too. I've failed so many times, Cole. I don't want to fail her." "You haven't failed, Emma," Cole said gently, taking her hand. "You've done the best you could, and that's all anyone can ask. We're a family now, and families fight for each other." The words felt like a promise, something deep and unbreakable. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, turning her face from him. "I can't do this again," she whispered. "I can't risk losing everything. I can't risk losing her." "You won't lose her," Cole said firmly. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Cole made the decision to visit the preacher. He needed to do something to make things right, to show Emma that he was committed, not just to the fight for Lily's future, but to her, to their family. The preacher, an old man with weathered hands and a wise gaze, listened intently as Cole explained the situation. "I need you to marry us," Cole said, the words sounding more desperate than he had intended. The preacher raised an eyebrow. "Son, marriage isn't a legal strategy. It's a covenant between you and God." "I know," Cole said, his voice tight, "but it's also a promise, one I need to make to her. I'm asking because I love her. I'm not asking out of obligation." The preacher considered this for a long moment before nodding slowly. "You're sure about this?" "I am," Cole said without hesitation. "This isn't just about the law. It's about making things right. It's about showing Emma I'm here for her, for Lily. It's about fighting for what we have." The preacher sighed, his expression softening. "I'll help you, son. I'll help you make it right." The next morning, Cole returned home with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He was determined to prove to Emma that he wasn't just another man who would leave when things got hard. He would stay, he would fight, and he would do whatever it took to keep their family together. As he worked in the barn that afternoon, Cole felt a small flicker of hope for the first time in a long time. He had made the right decision, and he wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the court, not of Martin, and certainly not of the future. When Emma found him that evening, he took her hand gently in his and led her to the porch. "Emma," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know you're scared. I know this isn't easy, but I need you to understand something. I'm not asking you to marry me because of Lily. I'm asking because I love you. I've always loved you, and I want to prove to you that I'm here to stay. I'm here for you and for Lily. I'm asking because I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that I can be the man you deserve." He kneeled before her, his heart in his throat, as he looked up at her with all the sincerity he could muster. "Will you marry me, Emma?" The silence between them was thick with the weight of his words, and for a long moment, Emma didn't speak. But finally, she reached down, pulling him up and holding him close. "You stubborn, impossible man," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." It wasn't just a promise of a future together. It was a declaration that no matter what the world threw at them, they would stand together, fighting for the family they had built from the ashes of their past. And as they embraced, the future no longer seemed so uncertain. They had each other, and that, Cole realized, was enough. The road ahead would be hard, but it was a road they would walk together, hand in hand. The days that followed Cole and Emma's decision to marry were a whirlwind of preparation and emotions that neither of them could escape. They worked side by side, their movements more coordinated than ever. The unease that had once defined their every interaction slowly melting away with each passing day. The ranch, which had once seemed like a burden too heavy to bear, now felt more like a home, a place where they were building something, not just for themselves, but for Lily too. The reality of their upcoming wedding brought an undercurrent of tension, but it was different this time. It wasn't just about the legalities or about proving anything to the world. It was about the two of them finally coming together, acknowledging what had always been there beneath the surface. Emma, despite her best efforts to appear unaffected, was scared. Cole could see it in the way she looked at the house, at the empty spaces that had once seemed like nothing but reminders of all the years she had struggled alone. She was terrified of loss, and perhaps even more terrified of being vulnerable enough to hope for happiness again. But Cole wasn't scared anymore. He had learned over the years that the greatest risks often came with the greatest rewards, and the love he felt for Emma, for Lily, was worth everything. As the day of the wedding grew closer, the whole town seemed to know about it, and the whispers that had once been filled with judgment now carried a sense of curiosity and, in some cases, approval. The preacher had agreed to marry them quickly, understanding the urgency of the situation. He offered to come by the ranch the afternoon before the wedding, the day they would all meet in front of the oak tree where Cole and Emma had once carved their initials as teenagers. It would be simple. Just the preacher, a few close friends, and Lily, who had already started calling Cole Papa in the sweetest voice. That morning, as the sun rose, Cole woke early to finish the rocking chair he had been working on for the past few days, the one that had been started by his father but never finished. The project had been a labor of love, a way for him to prove to Emma that he wasn't just asking out of duty. He had carved her name into the wood, as well as a small scene of a family under a tree, just the way he imagined them, in a place where they could finally be whole. When Emma saw the finished piece, her eyes filled with unshed tears. She didn't say much, but the way she touched the wood, the way her fingers traced the carving of their family, told Cole everything he needed to know. She wasn't ready to fully let go of her fears, but she was starting to trust him again. As they worked on the final preparations for the wedding, Emma sewed the simple wedding dress she would wear, using fabric she had saved for years, and Cole took on the task of preparing the land, clearing out the weeds, and gathering the flowers they would use for the ceremony. Lily was his little helper, running around with a basket full of wildflowers, laughing as she proudly showed him her collection. Cole couldn't remember the last time he had felt so at peace. The ranch, the land, the woman he loved, it was all coming together in a way he had never dreamed possible. As evening approached, with the last rays of sunlight beginning to fade behind the mountains, Emma stood at the window, looking out at the land. She had always loved this place, even when it was hard, even when she felt like she was fighting against the world. But now, as she stood there with Cole beside her, with Lily playing in the yard, she realized that this wasn't just about surviving. It was about living, about making a home, about building a future that was full of hope and love. That's when she turned to Cole, her heart full, and said, "Are you ready?" The question wasn't just about the wedding. It was about everything they had been through, everything they had fought for. It was about the family they were building and the future they would make together. Cole smiled, his heart full of the same hope that had been missing for so long. "I've been ready for a long time," he replied, taking her hand in his. Together, they walked outside, their hearts intertwined, and as they approached the oak tree where they had once carved their initials as teenagers, Cole felt the weight of the past lift from his shoulders. This was it. This was the moment they had both been waiting for. They stood together under the tree, with the preacher waiting patiently by their side. Emma's hand in his, Cole looked out over the land, the place where his father's mistakes had once haunted him, the place where he had run from love and family. Now, it was a place where he could finally plant roots. The ceremony was brief, but it was full of meaning. The preacher spoke of love, of forgiveness, and of family. When it was time for their vows, Cole took a deep breath, looking at Emma with a sense of certainty he had never known before. "Emma," he said softly, "I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but the one thing I know for sure is that I love you, and I always will. I'm not running anymore. I'm here to stay with you, with Lily, and with this land we've fought for." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him, her heart racing. "Cole, I didn't know how to believe in love again. I didn't know how to let myself hope. But you showed me that it's never too late. You've shown me that love isn't just about the past. It's about the future. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us." With that, they exchanged simple rings. Nothing fancy, just a symbol of the love that had always been there, hidden beneath the surface of years of pain and misunderstanding. The preacher smiled, and with a final blessing, they were married. Their first kiss as husband and wife was soft, tender, and full of promise. As they pulled away, Lily, who had been standing by the tree with wide eyes, clapped her hands and ran to them, throwing her arms around their legs. "Mama, Papa, you're married now," she exclaimed, her voice full of joy. Cole bent down and picked her up, holding her close. "Yes, we are little one," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "And we're a family now." The moment was perfect. Everything they had fought for, the ranch, the love, the family, was finally theirs. And as they stood together, looking out at the land that had once been a source of pain and regret, they knew that this was just the beginning. Their journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. But for the first time in a long time, they were no longer running from the past. They were building a future together. In the days that followed, Emma's fear of losing Lily was finally put to rest when the custody hearing ended in their favor. Martin Grace's claim was dismissed, and the judge ruled in Emma and Cole's favor, recognizing the love and stability they had built for Lily. It was the final step in a long, painful journey. But now Emma could finally breathe. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a mother, a wife, and a woman who had found her place in the world once more. The ranch began to flourish. Cole's furniture became sought after in town, and Emma's cooking and preserves became the talk of the community. Lily flourished in school, and the town, once filled with whispers, began to see the Hartmans not as outsiders, but as a family, a real family, one that had endured and thrived. Cole finished the rocking chair, now a symbol of their love and their journey together. They placed it in the corner of their living room, where it would forever be a reminder of how far they had come. One warm evening, as the sun set over the prairie, the family gathered on the porch, the golden light casting long shadows across the land. Cole held their son, Samuel, in his arms, and Emma sat beside him, her hand resting on his knee. Lily sat on the steps, her little face filled with wonder as she looked out at the horizon. Emma turned to Cole and asked, "Do you ever regret coming back?" Cole smiled, his heart full of gratitude. "Every day, I'm grateful I did." Emma laughed softly, the sound like music to his ears. "We've come so far from that first day," she said. Cole nodded, remembering the day he had first returned, standing at the property line, unsure of what the future held. "When you told me I had no right to be here," he said with a grin. Emma laughed again, a sound that filled him with warmth. "I was wrong. You were always supposed to be here." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Cole reflected on his father's words. A man isn't measured by what he inherits, but by what he builds. He looked at his family, Emma, Lily, and Samuel, and understood the truth of those words. His father had given him the land, but it was Emma who had given him a reason to stay. Emma smiled, squeezing his hand. "We gave each other that." The camera pulled back, and the family was silhouetted against the golden sunset, the ranch stretching endlessly in front of them. The past had been full of pain, but the future was theirs to build. In the distance, the sound of the wind over the prairie seemed to whisper of new beginnings, of second chances, of love that had finally found its way home. And as the camera faded to black, The words echoed in Cole's mind. Some men spend their whole lives running from the past, but the bravest ones run toward it and build a future there. The land, the family, the love, it was all theirs now, and nothing could take that away. The journey had come full circle.